What amazing, magical thing has really ever happened when you just stayed in your little comfort zone?
You're listening to Cannonball Mindset, a podcast dedicated to helping people achieve the most out of their personal and professional lives. The Cannonball Mindset challenges you to step out of your comfort zone and lean into the possibility of having a life of abundance. Disruptors, innovators, and groundbreakers are all welcome. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the Cannonball Mindset. And I had the pleasure, I think it was probably 4 or 5 months ago, of being at a conference in LA, and a home building conference, all these CEOs of home builders. And they brought this speaker in, and he was awesome. He was talking about leadership and how to lead through change. He has an amazing story. He's a Navy SEAL. He's got all these badass stories, which are awesome. Very authentic guy. So I was like, I got to get this guy on the podcast, and his schedule is crazy busy. So it took a little while, but I'm really, really grateful to have on Brent Gleeson, who wrote a book called Taking Point, which is it's up there. It's probably in my top 10 favorite books of all time, and I'm a big reader. So great book. Welcome to the show, Brent.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be on.
So Brent, listen. Before we get started, I think one of the number one things that comes up, and right now more so than ever, is the fascination with Navy SEALs. Like, it's almost like, if you're a Navy SEAL, you used to be. So when I was a kid, celebrities or people you looked up to, and this is, I think, one of the great things about the direction America's going. We won't go into politics today, but I think this is a great sign of things are going in the right direction. Is when I was a kid, you didn't know, like, your celebrities, your people you looked up to were Michael Jordan and Emmitt Smith, and depending on where you live, these football players, or maybe you love this actor. But now you start seeing these more well-known people that people are following through social media are Navy SEALs. Like, there's I can list off 5, 6, 7 Navy SEAls right off the top of my head right now that I've either read their book or heard them speak. I think that's pretty amazing, and it's becoming. I'm saying, do you see that? Do you see that the fascination with Navy SEAls and military in general is becoming more and more like, wow?
Yeah, some of that is actually by design. Obviously, historically, as part of our culture, it's been more of the silent warrior mindset, and not talking about what we do. But we've also found that in our post 9/11 reality, maintaining too much secrecy has really damaged our ability to recruit, because nobody knew about us. Nobody knew about what we're really about, and what our true mission profile is. So some of that actually was a big cultural transformation within the military to move away, at least partially, from that old mindset to lifting the veil of secrecy a little bit, so to speak, so that we could actually get the word out and do better recruiting, better marketing, so to speak, because one of the initial priorities after 9/11 under Rumsfeld was to dramatically increase the size of naval special warfare and the special operations community in general. But we can't make the training easier. So if you think about it from a sales perspective, we have to fill the top of the funnel with better leads.
Yeah, right.
Leads, we got to do better marketing. So that's kind of where that shift has come from. And then also just by the general nature of how many people we have coming out of the military into the workforce these days, it's really would be like, for example, if I went to Harvard Business School, I would not tell people I went to Harvard Business School when I'm trying to get a job. It's natural to sometimes want to not focus on that part of your previous career, but we're also helping guys when they transition through organizations that are great, like Elite Meet and Honor Foundation. But that's your resume. It's okay to use it. So these are kind of some of the transitions we've seen that have organically shifted into the SEAL teams more into the public.
Yeah, I love it. I love the idea that my 14-year-old daughters are cognizant of men and women who put their life on the line for this country, and then from that learn so much experience to teach on to others. The idea that when did you enter the military? Like, how old were you? What made you decide, hey, this is what I'm going to do?
It's a bit of a funny story. I'll keep it short, but I grew up in Dallas. I did my undergrad at Southern Methodist University, double majored in finance and economics. And so I graduated and took a job as a financial analyst with a large commercial real estate investment firm. But I also had two close friends who were joining the Navy upon graduation. One was my roommate, so he graduated with me, went into the Navy. Obviously, this is 2000, so this was just pre 9/11. So it was peacetime, kind of a different mindset of what service would be all about. Obviously, serving for a cause greater than yourself, but it was still peacetime. I also had another close friend, a fraternity brother of mine, actually, who was a year behind me in school. He wanted to become a SEAL. That was kind of his boyhood, lifelong dream. And so he and I actually started training together. For me, it was just a way to stay fit. And, and for him, it was helping him prepare for this arduous journey ahead. And over that about a year and a half period, I became fascinated with the history, the culture, and the potential challenge that would come with. And it was reading every book I could find about the SEAL teams, and that fascination, coupled with the somewhat boring nature of my entry-level financial analyst position, led me down the path to, not be that guy who said, "Oh, I thought about doing that, but I didn't." Have no regrets, and so I quit my job and enlisted in the Navy.
So here's what's crazy. So you go to school, and maybe it's not crazy, but it's crazy to me. You go to school, you get a double major, right? So you get a job doing what you went to school for, right? Seemingly, and this is an assumption on my part, making good money, good security, good certainty of, hey, I'm going to have a 401k, I'm going to have, a white picket fence, I'm going to have all these things, I'm going to have a Volvo in the driveway, life is going to be good, right? And you start training with somebody so that he can go in the military, but you can stay in shape, because, if you're going to have a white picket fence and, 2 kids and a dog named Spot and all the perfect life, well, you want to be in shape, so you stay in shape. And then you make the decision to leave all of that, to go put your life on the line. That's a pretty big dichotomy there. That's a pretty big jump there, right?
Yeah.
So it can't be just, well, I think this is good. You still have to take the jump, right?
Yeah, and I'm actually writing my second book right now that's really about, it's more in the, I don't like this phrase, but the self-improvement, self-help space.
Yeah.
More kind of in-your-face, no BS type of self-help guide. And a lot of it's about expanding your comfort zone. So taking calculated risk and really doing difficult things every chance you get, because obviously the more you push yourself beyond your comfort zone limits, the wider that area becomes. So it was a huge risk, of course, because of the attrition rate in general, SEAL training. And if you don't make it, you're not going back to Dallas for your finance job. You're stuck in the Navy.
You're in Alaska somewhere.
Yeah. But we see a lot of guys doing that these days. About 75% of our enlisted SEALs have undergrad degrees. In part, it's a strategic move, because if you think about a class of, let's say, 200 students that begins SEAL training, only a small percentage of that will be open to officers. So half of those go to Naval Academy guys, and a portion go to guys going to college in ROTC or OCS.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys will enlist first and become officers later if they want to, even after going through undergrad, because it can be a faster path to get to BUDS, because there's more slots per class. We have around 6 classes a year, so just do the math. Like I mentor guys into the program and through BUDS, and a mentee I have right now, actually, it's Hell Week this week.
Right. That's great.
And ironically, Hell Week starts on a Sunday. Ironically, if you live in San Diego, it's been raining most of the week.
Oh, nice. So
that is not an accident. That is not an accident.
It's all by design.
It is all by design. My Hell Week was a winter Hell Week. It rained every day.
That's awesome.
In San Diego.
So let's talk about that. So now you're this 20-some-year-old kid. I say kid because I'm old, right? How old were you at that point? 24?
I was, 23, 24. Yeah.
Right. And you enter Navy SEALs. And I want to get back to what BUD stands for. I know because I've read your book and I've kind of, but those people that aren't familiar may not know what that means, but what is it like? What's that hell week like? And besides saying hell, it's like hell. What is the hell week like, and why is there such a drop in attrition from the people that started to the people that finish?
So I'll kind of quickly explain the pipeline. BUDS is the first 6 months. It stands for Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL. And then once those who graduate BUDS will go on to advanced training, which is SQT or SEAL qualification training. So BUDS is 3 phases, first phase, second phase, third phase. And first phase, each phase is about 2 months. And first phase is where they essentially weed everybody out. You essentially weed most of your class out in the first 4 weeks. So there's 3 weeks leading up to Hell Week, and then you have Hell Week, which again, like I said, is this week for class 333. I was class 235, so we're almost 100 classes past. Now I feel old.
Wow. Yeah.
And so you'll have 3 weeks leading up to Hell Week. And those 3 weeks that lead up to Hell Week are very, very difficult. You'll lose half your class just leading up to Hell Week. And then you'll lose, probably another 70% of those guys during Hell Week. And then you'll come out of Hell Week with, 40 students or so. And then you'll lose some more of those to performance roles, injuries, drops, things like that. Usually nobody quits after Hell Week, but they can get dropped for performance or rolled back to another class if they're not quite getting it in certain areas. So that's kind of how that works. Now, it's challenging. People always say, well, it's more physical, it's more mental. I've heard it's more mental. Obviously, those two things are intimately connected, mind and body. And so the way I prepared was to train physically, relentlessly for almost 2 years. And the harder you push yourself physically beyond your comfort zone, obviously mental toughness continues to evolve and develop, which is critical for SEAL training. But it's just, some people have a harder time with the running or the swimming or certain evolutions. But overall, it's just the overarching stress, anxiety, and the grind of the day-to-day. You're very, very sleep deprived. In Hell Week, you get max a couple hours of sleep, and it's not on Wednesday, and it's not restful sleep. your body is clenched up so violently because your muscles are so strained. You've probably got some stress fractures and a little flesh-eating bacteria sprinkled in there somewhere. And you're shivering so violently that you're not exactly sleeping. But they're trying to push the rigors essentially of long-term combat, so to speak, through your mind and body to essentially test, what you're made of. And we've dumped millions of dollars into trying to study the physical and sort of mental and cognitive makeup of students that are more likely to graduate. And other than the less measurable qualities of grit and resilience, one of the key things we found is just a deep, deep passion to serve at that capacity. Not just serve in the military, but to serve in the special operations community as a SEAL. And that's why I have so much respect for the young guys coming through the program now, and the guys I mentor. Is when I went in, it was more of a selfish, like, let me see if I can become a SEAL.
More ego-driven.
Yeah, more ego-driven. I thought I was going to be, traveling the world, hanging out in the Philippines and getting tattoos and drinking. And I never went to Pacific Command. I spent all my time in Iraq, Africa, and other nasty places. But, obviously, that was a mindset transformation for everybody after 9/11 in the military. But the guys coming in now, especially going into special operations, they know they're going downrange. They know they're going to be taking the fight to the enemy, and that's why I have so much respect for the guys now, is because it's a totally different way of thinking when you go in now.
So I love that statement you just made, and I love the data that you backed up with it, because I think it's so true in life. And I want to get your take on the correlation here, that the people who make it more, the people that survive Hell Week, to get through those first 4 weeks, that make it through this training, are the ones that have a much more deep-rooted passion for why they want to do it. Do you think that correlates with in life in general, with success in general? I'm saying the people, we talk about it all the time, but do you think that's real?
Well, it totally is. I mean, obviously in the early stages of training, we have a lot of sayings, obviously, in the NSW community, but one of them is embrace the suck. And the people. So if you think about that philosophy, embracing the suck, that means leaning into the pain, not trying to move away from it, but embracing it and just maintaining a positive mental attitude and that level of mental fortitude to essentially for example, the guys who could literally laugh through the worst parts of Hell Week, for example, typically are the guys, this is obviously a simple analogy, but typically are the guys who will make it through, who aren't taking it too seriously. They know it's going to suck. Okay, get over it. This is going to be a blip on the radar screen of my career as a SEAL, potentially. And the same thing applies, obviously, in life. I just wrote an article for my Forbes column yesterday about resilience, which is a great quality to have in life in general. Obviously, simply put, people who can really thrive in adversity, bounce back from adverse situations, not just quickly, but essentially stronger than they were before. That applies in your personal life. That applies in leadership and management and business, probably today now more than ever with the fast-paced level of modern business and constant disruption. Resilience is a really core quality of great high-performing teams, great leaders and managers. And just you'll see that typically more in successful people, that the series of failures that lead them to whatever success they define those are building blocks, not deterrents. Failure, I believe, is one of life's greatest gifts if you can use it in a way to learn and to develop new skills and a new way of thinking sort of about your reality. Then you're going to continually be in a state of growth and development.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that, so what is it? So you got to have the passion for whatever it is you're doing, whether you're a Navy SEAL or whether you're a banker or whether you're a stay-at-home mom, or whether, you got to have passion for what you're doing to really push through those adverse times and those bad circumstances. How do you figure that out? Like, how does one figure out? And I think this is maybe it's an impossible question to answer, but how does one person figure out what they're passionate about when it sways so much based on the circumstance? So let me give you an example. So if I say I'm so passionate about sales, I think I'm passionate about sales, but every time somebody comes in and they reject me, I give up and it changes my thoughts. I'm saying, is that a sign that you're not passionate? Like, how do you figure that shit out? How do you figure out? I
think it's a lot of trial and error. Obviously, in experimenting with career path opportunities, you'll gradually, like, I never set out to be a SEAL in my young adult life. I was going to do the white picket fence finance thing, with a yellow lab and a couple kids. And life in Dallas. I love Dallas, but that was the path. And so I think that when people can say yes to more things, take a little bit of calculated risk, it's really all about my philosophy, and what I'm kind of exploring in this new book is really finding the magic outside of your comfort zone. And we can push beyond the confine. Like, if you think about it in your life, what amazing magical thing has really ever happened when you just stayed in your little comfort zone?
Nothing, ever. Nothing great.
Nothing at all. But when you can accept the opportunity to fail, accept the opportunity for pain and for rejection and things like that outside your comfort zone, well, gradually you become comfortable being uncomfortable. And therefore your comfort zone has expanded. And then you move the goalposts again and again and again. The same thing applies in sales. When I've done sales training for my employees in the past and my companies, and just being an entrepreneur, I'm by definition a salesperson. Rejection sucks. I mean, with our first company right out of grad school, it was me and my business partner on the phones all day long, on the phones. And it was miserable. I wanted to get past that point so quickly so that we could build up enough revenue to hire people to do that. I hate it. Then when you get to that sort of like that executive level of sales, it's more exciting. You're talking to the top people at the organization.
You're playing golf and you're
playing golf. You're traveling around. You're not hammering the phones like a young kid. But we all have to get past those moments in order to get to. I think in that comfort.
I think I love this conversation, because I think that what happens is, and I see it often. I've experienced it myself in my own life, where we stay in our comfort zone and we try to convince ourselves that we're happy, or that we're growing, or that I'm not here because I want to stay in my comfort zone. I mean, because I have to stay in my comfort zone. This is by design. This is what I want. But I don't want anymore. I have everything I want. And I see it all the time, where people, they literally lie to themselves about what they really want, because they're afraid to step outside that comfort zone. In order to do that, you have to have great introspection. Like, you have to really look inward, right?
Well, and that's the beauty and pain of being more self-aware. Smokers tell themselves that they can quit, but they just enjoy smoking.
Yeah, right.
Alcoholics say, I can stop drinking if I wanted to, but I love drinking.
Yeah, right.
And people say that too about, like, to your point about their comfort zone. They say this is my choice, but we're the architects of our own beliefs, and that's the problem, really, is because typically we have to get out of our own way to find a path to greatness, or to whatever we want to accomplish, regardless of whatever success, however we define it. But typically, if you look at it, any time we haven't accomplished something, or we're procrastinating on some project we want to take on, it's ourselves that are standing in the way, not other people, not some other roadblocks that are standing in your way. You're just making a choice not to go down that path. You're making a choice not to succeed in that area. You're making a choice. I really believe, like the instructors in the early days of Buds, they tell you that success in this program is a conscious decision. You'll make up your mind whether you want to pass or fail. It's up to you. It's your choice.
Love that shit.
So,
I love that. I think that's
it's true. Yes, obviously there are certain things like breaking your leg that will probably not get you dropped from the program. It'll get you rolled back to another class. So you still have the opportunity to choose to succeed. But most of the guys who quit, they're just choosing to quit. They're listening to their brain. We've created sort of the Buds program loosely around that sort of 40% rule. When your brain, it's actually a rule of 7, but there's another way of explaining it. One of my classmates and teammates, David Goggins, whom you probably know well. He's got a huge following now. On his book just came out called "You Can't Hurt Me." But similar philosophy. What David says so eloquently is, do something that sucks every day. It's the same philosophy of pushing the boundaries of your comfort zone. And that's how you build your mental toughness muscles, so to speak. But that's how when guys quit, they choose to quit. Just it's the same analogy for life in general. When we fail at something, typically we've made a series of choices that have led us down the path to failure, or we've gotten distracted by other opportunities or other temptations. And that's why we didn't, succeed at whatever we were choosing. We tell ourselves, hey, I chose not to do that. But in Buds, it's, when you're from a cognitive perspective, when your brain is telling you can go no further, you're really only half the way there.
Yeah, right. You got to be stronger than your brain, right? You got to literally be stronger than this machine. And what's crazy about it is, if you think about it, the computer that we have, right, this brain that we have, is 1,000 years old, is a million years old. So we're going off the information. We have to learn to rewire our brain. And saying essentially that's what happens I'm never gone through Navy SEAL training, but I'm assuming what they're doing is they're rewiring your brain to see things differently, to change your perspective on pain, change your perspective on all 100%. Those things.
That's what I wrote about yesterday. And when it comes to resilience, and I've done a lot of research on this topic too. It's just not my own philosophy, but it's becoming more resilient is a choice. You choose to look at, to your point, adversity in a totally different light. And when you can look at adversity differently, then you make different choices about how you respond in adverse situations. Obviously, you can either recoil in fear and depression, or you can get past the initial fear and depression and disappointment and move quickly into a forward-thinking action plan of how you're going to mitigate the negative aspects of whatever situation you're in, and really take the positive elements of the situation, or discover the unseen positive elements of the situation and leverage those to move forward in some capacity.
You had said, when we're trying to get outside our car, and I want to get to your book, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I'm loving this conversation, so I hope you're okay with where it's going. But you had said the goal is to jump outside of our comfort zone and keep moving the goalpost out, like keep moving the goalpost in. But what I find is that people are moving the goalposts, but they're moving them in closer to themselves, not moving them out further. They're actually moving them in, because the closer I move them in, the less chance I have of failing, the less chance I have of being disappointed, the less chance, so I got to hold on to what I got really, really close, rather than aspire to have more. Is that?
Yeah. You see that? Oh, absolutely. But if you look at it, as you know from your own career and all the amazing people that you interview, not one single person that you could think of that could be defined as successful has not had a long string of failures. You know, for example, Walt Disney was told by his initial editor that he had no great ideas. He wasn't creative. Oprah, who's a billionaire and has her own TV network, was fired from her first broadcasting job because she was too passionate about the stories.
Yeah.
And these people, you know, Jerry Seinfeld, probably one of the most famous comedians of all time, just like a lot of comedians, was booed off stage dozens and dozens of times early in his career. His family and friends were saying, take life seriously, get a real job. This isn't going to work for you. Well, he kept at it because he had a passion for it. And that passion ran deep, and that passion kept him focused on the long-term vision as opposed to listening to the inside and outside voices telling him, you're right, this probably is going to be too tough of a path.
Yeah, perfect. So all right, so you go through Hell Week, you make it through Hell Week, and obviously you make it through Hell Week because you're sitting here telling us the story, right? So you make it through Hell Week. What's next? What happens after Hell Week? After you get through SEAL training, then what?
Well, Hell Week's just the beginning. You still have a long road. Another 15.
It gets harder after Hell Week, or like in my mind, it's always been like Hell Week's at the top of the mountain, and then the next is kind of still hard. But you're like kind of coasting down.
It's harder in a different way. That you're not going to do another sort of evolution like Hell Week, but you know, one of the misconceptions is the training becomes more difficult because it becomes much more complex, very, very academic. I mean, it's essentially like getting a master's degree in special operations. I mean, I have notebooks in my garage that are, you know, this thick just on one topic. And you have to know all this stuff, and you have to make the grade too. So it's not just the physical requirements, but the stress of the academic side of the program. Officers need to make 90% and above on all tests. Enlisted guys need to make, I think, 80% and above in all tests. And just like physical evolutions, you only have a couple chances to miss the grade. And otherwise you'll usually go to, you know, a board review and they'll kind of work with you typically. But if you're not making it academically too, you're going to be performance dropped from the program. So it's the all encompassing physical strain, academic stress. And then when you get to the teams, you're constantly training. Even if you're on deployment, you're constantly training when you're not on an actual mission. Long days, long nights, long weeks, hard training, freezing cold, super hot. I mean, it's a grind. So it's not just that sort of intense week of Hell Week that weeds everybody out, but they're also trying to get you ready for what is a very physically and emotionally demanding job. So.
Okay, awesome. So now, for you, at what point did you realize? So after all that, how much time? Again, I know the answer to this, but so for people that don't know, how much time did you spend in the military after, you know, all told?
Yeah, only about 6 years. To get real for a minute, I think it's, you know, the grass is always greener. I regret every day for, you know, leaving the teams when I did. I had sort of a life plan. I had not planned on doing it as a career, and I kind of wanted to stick to my plan and go to grad school and get back into business. But at the same time, you know, part of me, you have these layers of guilt, you know, guilt for the things you did downrange, guilt for the things you didn't do, for the people you couldn't save, and just guilty in general for being alive when your brothers aren't. So, you know, I always carry that with me, wishing I had stayed in longer. At the same time, it's, you know, I'll open up and tell, you know, team guys or retired guys or guys who are still in that, and they'll be like, no, you don't. It's, you know, if you were back in and still in, you would probably wish you were out. You know, it's
always one or the other.
You always wonder, but yeah, so that was, you know, it was a very busy time then. My task unit from 5, we were the first SEALs in Iraq in 2003. Very high operational tempo. So did several tours and then decided to, you know, move on.
Yeah. So did you anticipate back then, and this is what I love, so the idea that even just what you just said of saying, hey, I got out, and says days I regret it. But think about, you know, the amount of people that you have helped since being out. So you helped everyone when you were in, because you were keeping us safe, you were keeping your brothers safe, you were fighting for our country. But when you're out, your impact now is just as great. Would you agree? I'm saying you're traveling around the world. You're writing amazing books where this is improving people's lives. I run a company. I run a business. I run a pretty successful business. I have a great podcast. But I absolutely got better by reading your book. So I got better without knowing that you were keeping me safe then. But now I got better because I know of you. Does that make sense? I'm saying,
I think one of the ways I, outside obviously of the things I do on the work front, and I do get a lot of feedback like that. But I also, one of the ways and this was part of my plan too, one of the ways I continue to serve is by, for example, being on the executive board of the SEAL Family Foundation. So we're a more boutique version of the Navy SEAL Foundation. We support our NSW families, our active duty operators, the families of our fallen operators. Family resilience is one of our main missions. And so that's one of the ways I continue to serve and give back, and keeps me obviously intimately connected to the community. I chair one of our biggest galas every year in San Diego. And my wife and I do. It's like a full-time job. But also the mentorship that I do for these young guys coming into the program. Like I have 2 guys right now who are in Hell Week. It's not a formal program, but it's good to have I for example, had a mentor when I moved out to San Diego. Ironically, my parents both also went to SMU for undergrad, and my dad was a swimmer there, and one of his buddies on the swim team joined the SEAL teams after they graduated during Vietnam. And so he was a Merrill Lynch guy ever since he got out of the teams, and lives in La Jolla here in San Diego. And so my dad connected me with him when I moved out here. So I had a mentor, a former team guy. He used to swim at the Cove every morning. And there was another Korea era UDT guy, underwater demolition team guy. There was sort of the forefathers of the SEAL teams there as well. So we had like 3 generations of frogmen swimming every morning. It was just nice to be around, nice to have someone to talk to, nice to have someone to kind of lean on, especially in those early days when you're going through the shittiest parts of it. So I'll admit I get a lot out of it. Obviously, volunteerism and mentorship is also personally healing and very fulfilling. But it's just another way to continue to serve the community and give back, which I think is very important. So.
That's awesome. So well, let's get into your book. Your book, again, those of you who aren't watching the video but are listening, it's called Taking Point: A Navy SEAL's 10 Fail-Safe Principles for Leading Through Change. And if you haven't read it, definitely put it on your Audible list or your iBooks, whatever it is, get this book. But let me ask you a question. So without giving people the book away, you have 10 principles in this book, right? And it's hard to say to the author, hey, pick your favorite one, right? Because I'm sure they're all your favorite one because it's in the freaking book. But let's talk about one that kind of really resonates with you. Because I want people to understand that this is a great book about leadership. It's a great book about perseverance. It's great principles throughout the whole thing. But let's pick 1 or 2 and kind of talk through them.
Sure. If I had to pick one, I would choose it because it really resonates throughout the book. Chapter 1 is all about culture. And really understanding I know in my experience as an entrepreneur, you always say, well, if you could have done a few things differently early on in your career, what would they be? And one of them definitely would be to, from the get-go, better define the foundation of the organization, the culture, the core values, the purpose, the why. Why do we exist? Why do we exist for our customers? What are we here for? How are we going to emotionally connect our team members to this mission narrative? Obviously you can draw a simple correlation to the SEAL teams. Everybody's emotionally connected to the job, to the mission. And therefore we have extremely high levels of employee engagement, right? 100% employee engagement. We're the only organization that can claim that. Right. And as we know, engagement is a big challenge in most organizations, especially with multi-generational workforces and the challenge of continuing to learn how to engage and instill passion in different people of different ages in different ways. But it all comes down to culture. And of course, culture is reflective of leadership, but culture and the strengths of an organizational culture are what drive engagement. And of course, leadership, culture, and engagement are what drive customer retention, employee retention, efficiency, and profitability for any company, regardless of what kind of industry you're in. So if I had to go back and do it again, I would have better defined those things so that we could really pivot from that foundation and make decisions based on that foundation, as opposed to like most entrepreneurs who fly by the seat of our pants pushing sales because especially if you go out and raise money and you have a board and shareholders, they're not going to really care much initially about
the
culture statement. They're going to know how many sales you made this month. Are we going to hit the numbers we projected this year? I don't think any board meeting I've ever been in my companies, even though I wanted to talk about this stuff, did we ever talk about culture?
Yeah.
And when I did bring it up, eyes started rolling and people were like, yeah, anyways, let's get back to the financials.
It's so ironic you brought that one up, because I started my own company a couple of years ago as a sole entrepreneur, right? So I go out, I start my own company, and it's all about getting sales. I left a great paying job, great company, great culture, all these great things because I wanted to do it my way.
Yeah.
But then the challenge, with doing it your way is, well, you got to pay for your way. And so I'm like, shit, I got to get sales. And I was just trying to survive. And it was just me.
Yeah.
And then I hire an employee, and now it's me and somebody else. And we're like, all right, now I got to pay for somebody else. And so what happens is you start to get into this routine. So I'm now 2 years in, and I just yesterday said, we're going to have a meeting with everybody involved in the company. So I got all these outside contractors I work with, all these people that are involved in piecemeal here or there, freelance. So they're all going to come to town, and we're going to figure this out. Where are we going? Make sure we're all, because I know where we're going in my entrepreneur mind, but everybody else is working in silos. So I wasn't even eating my own dog food, what I was teaching and what I was reading, because I was too busy trying to survive. But you're 100% accurate. So that is, to me, it's like amazing that that's the one you picked, because if I were to talk about one right now that I need most in my company, it's that one.
Yeah, and it's for any organization, any team. The culture is the foundation of everything you do and your purpose and what people can connect to. And that's why if you look at some of the obvious ones out there, the Zapposes and Amazons and Ubers, Googles of the world, who really prioritize and emphasize culture, and it's very clearly defined. They perform better financially. This applies to sales teams. It applies to operations, the organization wide. Even like you said, even your vendors, your strategic partners, your contractors. Everybody needs to kind of be on board on what the vision is, what the mission narrative is, and that's oftentimes where organizations fall short. Is everybody's kind of assuming they understand, where their organization's going and why it's going there, but the person at the top might have a vastly different idea of where the company's going, but they just haven't communicated it down the chain of command clearly and in an aligned fashion. Because it's that game of telephone. Sometimes a leader has their idea of the mission and the vision and the purpose, and then as it trickles a few layers down, people have a totally different definition of what
totally different. Yeah. And you're right. And I think it's obviously by design that you put it first in the book, because it should start first, right? When you're starting a company, when you want to grow a team, the culture should start first. And what I made the mistake, and I think a lot of people make the mistake of, is they start the company with sales first, or with revenue first, or profit first, because they want to keep the company sustainable. But what actually keeps it sustainable is making sure that everybody's on the same page and that the culture is down.
Well, especially in today's fast-paced, disruptive world of modern business. Here's another correlation that I draw in the book. As you would think an organization like the SEAL teams, Naval Special Warfare, clearly defined our mission narrative and our culture and our core values from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
No. we had a training pipeline, and we knew generally what our mission was, but it wasn't until 2005 that the Navy SEAL ethos was created, because it's when an organization is tested under fire, so to speak, that those things really become so truly important. So in our post 9/11 reality, we've been moving at the speed of war for 4 years, and the leadership at the top kind of realized, hey, we really should probably define who we are as an organization so we can make decisions based off that narrative. And recruit based on that narrative, and know where we're going and why we're going there. So in a very corporate fashion, they did literally a 2-day leadership offsite event at San Clemente Island. And I don't know if it came out in its final form, but they basically put together the Navy SEAL ethos, which essentially is our mission, vision, purpose, and culture statement kind of all wrapped up into a nice one-pager. Very inspiring. It's very, it really embodies who we are as an organization and why we exist. And again, just like, a lot of organizations, as we grow and evolve and continue our constant transformation, we still kind of try to take a pulse on does that still resonate with the new generations coming into the SEAL teams. Believe it or not, we've got millennials in the SEAL teams too. So we've got that to deal with. And sometimes the answer is no, this doesn't resonate with me. It's too long. It's too much. I'd rather our ethos be one line, such as, deed over glory, I'd rather something like that be our ethos that I can really connect with rather than this whole one-page thing. Now, I'm an old guy, so I still really connect with the original.
With the one-pager. So just a couple more questions. So what is it in your opinion that really makes a great leader? So, there's a lot of people that listen to this that want to take a leadership role, or want to start really honing their skills as a leader. What is you've been around a lot of leaders. You're a great leader yourself. You talk about it in the book of people that you served under. What makes a great leader?
I think that if I had to choose just, sort of one or two, principles or disciplines, I would go in the direction of sort of that overarching servant leadership philosophy, self-awareness, empathy, and humility. I found that, and I said we wouldn't go into politics today, but if you look at today's administration, we kind of have quite the opposite of that. So essentially everything I define in the book around leadership, you can see the opposite of that. And that's not unusual in politics and, large organizations. You can have people at the very top who are essentially by definition terrible leaders. They're enough of a subject matter expert, or they have enough clout to where they've grown the organization to where it's gone. But I think that the best leaders that I've seen are more of that servant leadership philosophy, in part because that means that they're going to be lifelong learners. They're going to be not just accepting of upward leadership and management and transparent feedback from their team, but they crave it. They crave and desire feedback from others.
Real
Self-assessment is the worst possible way to determine how good of a leader you are. Right. It's, if just like, a comedian once said, if people aren't laughing, you're not funny. So why not get feedback from the team and say, how am I doing as your leader? How can I make your life and your job function better? How can we make this organization better? Because that honestly, it builds trust. It opens the lines of communication, and people will rally behind you when they know that you care about them and that you trust their feedback and you trust their opinion. Otherwise, why the hell did you hire them in the first place? If you're just going to put them in their box or their silo and not listen to them, then you as a leader are never going to grow and develop.
Yeah, I see that. So I asked that question to almost every guest I've had on the podcast, and every guest that I've had on the podcast, and we have some amazing guests on our podcast, and every one of them says the same answer. It's all about servant leadership. And so it seems like it's so well known, servant leadership, and this idea of servant leadership and what you just said about feedback. But I see also outside of the people I interview, I see people who are so afraid of real feedback, so afraid of radical candor or these real conversations for fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of, oh shit, I may lose my job, I'm saying, but if you want, to me, that's the greatest test of a leader. Do you want and can you accept real feedback?
Yeah, and it's essentially, if you had to choose one word, and it's the third chapter of the book, it comes down to accountability, ownership. And when your team knows that you're personally accountable, that you own your strengths and weaknesses and your flaws and you own them publicly, then they're also more likely to embody that similar behavior. And that way you can sort of organically create this highly accountable team where everybody's accepting of transparent feedback. And that's part of the SEAL culture to a brutal degree. And I don't think I carried that well with me initially into entrepreneurship and the civilian world. And I remember we were, running and gunning. My first company, we were blessed with, doubling, tripling in size every year, both in revenue and employee headcount. And I got to the point where I was like, we should probably get some feedback from these guys, not just about the company, but about me as the CEO. And so we started a 360 review process, anonymous peer review process. And I think and I was so excited to get that feedback. I was like, this is just going to validate how badass I am as their leader. Because clearly things were going great because we're growing.
Right. Yeah.
I seriously almost cried when I when I read that first 360. And I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
I suck.
But what's great about that is, one, if you can make a Navy SEAL cry, that's pretty powerful, right? Yeah. But what's great about it is, how much better did you become because of that feedback?
Immensely better, because I owned it, and I owned it publicly. I mean, after I was on an airplane, I printed it out, I was reading through, I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. And I ordered, like 7 cocktails later, I opened my laptop and brushed the tears from my eyes, and I decided to create a presentation on here's what I heard. Here's what I'm hearing from you, and here is initially at least my action plan for improving in these areas for myself and for the company. And when you do that, for example, the worst thing you can do is enlist feedback from the troops and not do anything with the data.
Yeah, the worst.
It actually has an adverse effect.
Yeah.
It damages trust because people get excited. They're like, oh, they care about my opinion. And then nothing happens. Then they're like, oh, screw it. Like, they don't care. That was just the box. And so I created a presentation, and I publicly presented that presentation to the company of here's what I heard. And then we did that 360 process every 6 months. And it improved my leadership ability, improved transparency, it improved trust and communication, and it improved the company also because we were getting very strategic and tactical feedback, of course, on systems, process, and strategy. Yeah. But it's a little uncomfortable at first, but like we say in the teams, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And it just gets easier and easier and easier, of course, especially if you're actually improving. And then the feedback gets better. So you don't feel shy as much anymore.
I have less tears wiped from my eyes. So, yeah, awesome. All right. So second to last question. So, obviously, you're everywhere because I heard you speak. I read your book. But then to get ready for the podcast, I Googled you. And if you Google you, you're freaking everywhere. So your SEO guy is fantastic, whoever that person is, because you're freaking everywhere.
I used to own an SEO company.
Oh, yeah, right. So where do people find you? Like, where do people find you? Where do they follow you? Where do they get some of your leadership? Where's this at?
From a social media perspective, I'm on LinkedIn. My Twitter's just @Brent Gleeson. Instagram, Brent_Gleeson. My speaking website that's got a lot of content and videos is BrentGleesonSpeaker.com. And our company website is TakingPointLeadership.com.
Yeah, that's awesome. Listen, from somebody who follows a lot of people and, really prides myself on being well-read and really trying to grow my mind, you got a lot of great shit out there. So, and what's great about it is you have a lot of free shit out there too. I don't know if that's by design, but, I wasn't asked to put my credit card in anywhere, and I got hours and hours of Brent Gleeson, which is awesome.
I asked Forbes and Inc. to pay me for my call, and they said no. So
why did they do that? All right. So great. I really appreciate you. Thank you very much for your service, both when you served and now. I think that you're providing invaluable experience to a lot of people's lives and making it better. Last question. So 30, 40, 50 years from now, when you've left this earth, and you're long gone, what do you want your contribution to have been to this world? What is the one thing that you want to have left this world to know that you were here?
It's a good question, and kind of the whole premise behind, like I said, that new book I'm writing is, in simply put, why leave your list of regrets to chance? It's your choice on what you want to regret and not regret when you're laying on your deathbed about to go over the great divide, hopefully to something better. Yeah. I think in an overarching sense, it is knowing that, I left it all out on the battlefield and made the world at least a little bit better place than I found it, through mentorship, through philanthropy. One of the things that I've always said as an entrepreneur is I want to work hard enough. I'm not saying this to sound cheesy or cliche, but work hard enough so that I can be successful enough so that I have the time and even financial resources to spend more time giving back. So that's why I'm on the board of the SEAL Family Foundation, where my family is an ambassador family for March of Dimes. And I think sometimes people do these things for the clout and for the going to the galas, but you know why you're doing what you're doing. And if you can really give back and leave the world better than you found it, then you can gracefully go on to better places.
Awesome. I love that. Awesome. All right. So I definitely want to have you back when you get your next book out. So I don't know when it's coming out, but please
Next year.
pencil a date.
We just started.
Yeah, but please let me come back when your next book is out. Those of you who haven't read Taking Point, I'm telling you, get it. Get a copy today. Don't wait. It's great. It's a great read, and it's an easy read. It's a great book to get through. So, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I know your time is valuable. So have a great day.
Thank you, brother. It was an honor.